Melissa Keller, Director of Events and Project Management for Vineyard Worship. We release new music on the first Friday of every month. Our single for February, You Don't Have to Lose Heart, is a timely song of encouragement and a beautiful reminder that God is at work in a story much greater than we can see. Featuring Emmy-nominated vocalist Dana J., You Don't Have to Lose Heart provides a strength and steadiness for the most anxious of souls.
Hey now, you don't have to lose heart. Hey now, we're only at the start of what he's doing here. Hey now, you don't have to lose heart. Hey now, we're only at the start of what he's doing here. He's here. So let us put our trust in the one who carries us. We can let go of every disappointment. Let us cling to love, to the hope ahead of us, so we can hold on to every single promise. Don't have to lose heart. Don't have to lose heart. Don't have to lose heart.
Find You Don't Have to Lose Heart and all of our singles wherever you listen to music.
The Ferment. All right, and we're back. This is part 2, Adam and Mike. We had to shut part 1 down because it was over an hour, and I thought, you know what, Mike, we didn't even get to everything we wanted to talk about.
Too long.
Too long, so we're going to maybe riff on a couple more things here. But to start with, I just want to pick up something that you posted a few weeks ago that went, it went kind of viral, at least in our world. It was a little bit viral.
Sure.
It's not viral by the internet standards, but, went pretty good. You posted a few weeks ago on the socials, you said, excellent worship is not always acceptable worship, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of resonance with that. Like I saw that it got shared over and over again, and I saw there was, lots of comments.
Yeah.
And then there were even some people who were like, but wait, dude, it's not just about putting anything up there.
Sure.
I'm imagining that post came from something.
Yeah.
Or came from a moment. Can you just talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's funny. So the exact quote was, excellent worship does not equal acceptable worship.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the meme, right?
Yeah.
Excellent worship is not acceptable automatically. Now, it doesn't mean that excellent worship can't be acceptable. It just doesn't, it's not a straight equalization. And it's funny because I spend most of my life from career trying to refine things and make them better. So
so excellence is your home language. That's your native tongue.
It's my jam. So the fact that the thing that I don't talk about much became more resonant than other things was kind of funny, but it got into like the non-vineyard world where there's these different worship leader forums, and it's just a different culture in some of these other forums, and people did not like it over there. Like, I definitely struck a nerve. This idea, I think I got it when I did my master's studies at Robert Webber Institute for worship. I did a master's in worship studies, and the whole idea is that you study the theology of worship, the non-musical parts of worship. I mean, there's musical aspects, but it's kind of like viewing the whole lens, viewing Scripture through the lens of worship. And it's fascinating. What really bummed me out in one of my classes was the professor, would say, even though you mean it with all your heart, there's still parts of our worship that God says no thanks to.
Okay, so let me just stop you there. What did he mean by that?
Like Cain and Abel, he didn't accept the offering of one of the brothers. Well, why not? What the heck? That's not fair. He was honestly offering it, Or, in Amos where God says, hey, all this stuff you're doing.
Oh, you're singing.
The cymbals, the clanging, it's
away with your songs.
Away with your songs, And in Matthew where he says, you're coming to bring your gift, but I'm going to ask you to leave your gift at the altar, go deal with your offense with your brother, then come offer your gift.
Or even later, I wasn't thinking of it a moment ago, but I'm thinking of it now when Jesus says to the Pharisees, I'm really glad you tithe.
Yeah.
Read for that worship. I'm really glad that you tithe everything, like even your herbs.
Yeah.
But you forgot mercy.
Yeah. So just this, we would like to think as Westerners that God's just cool with everything and grace wins the day and bro, it's all good, man. Just do whatever. But there's a sense that maybe there's a bit more weightiness and responsibility in worship that is important. And it's not stagecraft. Stagecraft is fantastic. And I love a great Broadway play and just, everything being done with excellence and goodness and all the light cues. And, when you go to a show on Saturday night and you're just blown away, like you're like, wow, whatever, a secular concert, for lack of a better word, you just are like, man, why can't the church... God is so much bigger.
Yeah.
Why is the John Mayer concert so amazing, but worship's so lame in the morning? So we have those thoughts. Our pastors and leaders have those thoughts, and we try to do that on Sunday. And if you're Louis Giglio and you've got a room that holds 1,000 people, you probably should be doing it.
Yeah.
You can and should do it. But in many of our rooms, just these little rooms with 50 people or 100 people or, whatever, we try to do it and it just falls short. Defining excellence just becomes more difficult. So what is acceptable in worship?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you next. Tell me
the way
give me the
you
sauce.
treat your sound tech, the way you communicate with your band, the way you deal with conflict. When somebody cancels on Monday and Sunday's coming, what do you say and do? Do you write a text that's kind of slight or, difficult, or do you have difficult conversations and do you honor people? And, these are the more important things that are happening. Have you sung about Jesus? Have you named your God in worship in several weeks? These are the things that make it Christian, that set it apart, that are part of the excellence equation. How you treat people as they come forward for communion. Is their table low enough for the kid that just got baptized? There's other things other than lights and cameras and slamming four on the floor.
So what I'm
parts.
hearing you say, or what I'm not hearing you say, is we shouldn't pursue excellence at all.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm just trying to highlight that.
No, excellence is
Excellence matters, but it's not the only thing.
It's not the only thing, and it doesn't mean God is happy. So a lot of times people get upset because they messed up. And baked into that is God deserves better. God deserves better. We need to get these vocals tuned. God deserves better. We need to get rid of the distractions. God deserves better.
Yeah.
We could never bring what he actually deserves.
Yeah.
This
gets all the way down to the gospel, right? In the Old Testament, it's like, don't bring God a blind lamb.
Yeah.
Which I understand.
Sure.
Offer the Lord something good.
Yeah.
You know? And then there's this sense in which, man, all of our lambs are blind.
Yep.
And thank God, just let me theologize here a moment. Thank God that Jesus is the one and only.
Yeah.
And he's just satisfied whatever that was.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus perfects our imperfect worship.
Mike, that might be a meme. My God, that was pretty good.
Well, Jesus is the mediator between Father God. So we bring imperfect worship. Even Chris Tomlin brings imperfect worship. Bethel brings imperfect worship. The most stringent, reformed, almighty fortress is our God. Just tight and godly.
Yeah.
That's imperfect.
Yeah.
It's not enough of who he is worth. We have not exaggerated him enough. We have not hyped him nearly enough.
Yeah.
We've hyped our stages. We've hyped ourselves for the love. We have hyped ourselves. We found ways to make ourselves excellent and look great and fantastic and parrot all the things that we've seen. But, are we bringing an acceptable worship? It's not just excellence. So a lot of times people will exclude young people because young people make mistakes. Yeah. And God is worthy. So we can't make any mistakes on the stage. God is worthy. So I would never have a young kid play guitar because he might make a mistake and God's not worth mistake. Just this weird thing that gets baked in to where only the experts get to play. Yeah. But a lot of times I hear the experts, I'm like, bro, you're a long way from like real musician. I know that's a hard word, but but we get kind of in ourselves in the church, we start patting ourselves on the back just because we bought some tracks and we're playing along with the tracks and we think it's better than it actually is. So just kind of defining excellence within your own culture, what that is. I define it in deeper ways than just the stagecraft, and that's really important.
Well, you mentioned Amos a minute ago.
Yeah.
I forget what chapter. I think it's Amos 4 and 5 in particular. It's been a minute since I've been there.
Yeah.
But part of what Amos is saying, and it's a bit of this meme, it's kind of an Old Testament meme, when Amos is saying, away with your songs, I don't want to hear it. Basically, the message there is no worship good enough to outweigh treating people poorly.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say in terms of like assessing what is actually excellent worship.
Yeah.
Well, it is playing well. It is, let's make the stage look good.
Yeah.
Let's make the room sound good. Let's get a board and maybe try to train someone to use it.
Yeah.
And is the culture of our church, is it kind to people? Is there kindness?
Yeah.
Is there any fruit of the Spirit? Is there patience? Gentleness. That's the fruit. Ain't nobody got gentleness. I haven't seen that in so that's kind of what I'm hearing you say, even for worship leaders and pastors, because we're such evaluators, aren't we?
Yeah.
We just, but there's something in our evaluation that has to go deeper.
Yeah, and the dream is worthwhile pursuing. And I've had it in my life. I've experienced excellent, amazing mixes with killer bands. And you look over on the stage and you're like, my goodness, all these people love Jesus and they're all committed. They probably all tithe, like this band, and they're amazing. This is a slice of heaven on earth. Yeah. And it's great. It's good. I think we should pursue that dream. But oftentimes those relational health, emotional health, generational health within our teams, it's going to slow the excellent ship down a bit. Yeah. And when I say that word excellent there, I mean just that kind of performance-driven thing. It slows it down, and rightly so. Otherwise, we would just, we'd spend $500 a person and just fill the stage with expert and be done with it, right? Yeah. It would be excellent. For $500, I could hire an emotionally intelligent, probably someone that reads their Bible once a week, in Atlanta. That could happen. So, but that's not our culture of our church, nor can we afford it. So it's that slower process of discipleship and balancing the conversation between those two things.
No, I love it. Well, I thought that was an interesting little moment that happened. And I just wanted to draw that out to you.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask you one more question that has to do with something that you had pointed out a little while back, and it's really important, and it's a conversation I don't think we ever have. So this is kind of a hard left turn from the conversation we just had in some ways. Talk to me about growing older as a worship leader. And I guess what I mean by that, the frame I want to put around it is, we have an American worship culture, at least in the last 25 years, that is becoming younger, and it ages people out. Like you and I even know some people who were fine worship pastors.
Yeah.
And they just, they got to be 50 and it's like, bro,
Yeah.
here's the door.
Yep.
And so there aren't a lot of examples of people who have grown old in worship.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you need to become a pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's what we need you to do in order for you to stay around here.
Yep.
But maybe that's not their vocational call. So I would love for you to just riff on that for a minute.
Yeah, it's been really interesting growing old. I'm 45 in the worship arts. Certainly in the Vineyard, there's a few prizes, church planner, missionary, pastor, right? So
Yeah.
we've really valued that role of pastor and church planter, which is fantastic. We should. But we haven't made space for any. We've had a difficult time making space for you to grow old in secondary gifting, second and third chair placements, worship leader being one of them. Yeah, it's really difficult because whatever the joke is, if you're a worship leader that can tie your shoe and talk in complete sentences, well, you should probably plant a church, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need more churches. But what does it look like for worship leaders to age within our churches and to grow in maturity and keep getting better and better? Just as our preachers keep preaching better, our worship leaders keep leading these liturgies, these worship communities stronger and better, and we stick with it for a long time. What does that look like? Is that okay? Is there permission for that? Do we see models of that?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have many.
We don't.
Well, I mean, I guess I would love for you to talk to me about, as a worship leader gets older,
Yeah.
and like let's say that this is a person who feels like that their vocational call
Yeah.
from God is in the area of worship.
Yeah.
Not preaching.
Sure.
They can't preach.
Yep.
It's not what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what is development look like?
Yeah, well, I think to grow older, especially with a musical, artistic framework that we have, like theology, it ages different than like guitar licks or like even the way you strum, like strum patterns. If you just stick with the same strum patterns you had when you were 18, you're not going to age well. People aren't going to hear it well. If you don't know what tracks are, if you've never heard of Coldplay, you need to.
Mike, you want to update that?
Well, you never heard of Billie Eilish.
That's pretty good.
Whatever, or just some understandings. Like I think you really, to grow older, at least I've noticed, and I'm learning right now, is I've got to continue to tap in to what younger generations are listening to. Obvious, right? This is obvious, but asking them. So I'll literally walk up to 13-year-olds and be like, give me five. Give me 5 things. Not necessarily even what's cool, because it's so different now. Like one kid will just listen to anime stuff, and then the next kid will listen to like random death metal. You know? Like everybody's so diverse, it's not so obvious anymore, but just asking more questions. What are some different sounds, some ways songs are sung? So like I've noticed this in coaching worship leaders is like older worship leaders that are older than me, maybe right now they're in their 60s, pushing 70, like the way they sang was the sound of music.
Yeah.
So you take a modern song like, all my life you have been faithful.
Yeah.
All my life, in the 80s and 90s that sang really well, but it doesn't sound modern. It's not serving a congregation. It sounds dated. The milk is a bit stale. And we're just used to it, right? So, and we like it. My preference might be Rich Mullins or Counting Crows vibes or like, mid-90s grunge vibe, but that's my personal preference, but I've chosen to widen that, So I've widened it older so I can sing
you just did that pretty well a minute ago.
I can sing, that.
Nice vibrato, by the way.
I can sing like that if I'm in an older congregation, at a few, not that I necessarily would, but I know the difference and I know what my own voice is doing. But here's another thing is, so being in tune with obviously what people are doing, but then just giving them the responsibility, letting them do it.
Yeah.
So, hey, you lead the next two songs. What are you talking about? You're the worship leader. Yeah, that's great, but I'm getting old. You lead.
Yeah.
So a worship leader that grows, a successful worship leader that hangs on is going to continue to give away that microphone, letting others lead.
It occurs to me that maybe this is one of the best ways to stay connected to your vocation as we get older in worship is to become more of a developer.
Yeah. Oh, you have to. That's the only way I can foresee staying in the game is you have to learn how to give it away, right? You just have to give it away. You have to think about songs, the way they sound. You have to think about gear, right? So like a 12-string Ovation guitar was the jam.
Yeah.
I mean, if you walked into a space with a 12-string Yamaha in 1989, people would swarm you and be like, what the heck? That's amazing, right? Dude, do not bring your 12-string. I mean, it might be coming around back. It hasn't yet, but
Maybe.
keep that bad boy at home.
Yeah.
That thing does not need to be anywhere near the people of God.
But all the 80 cents are back, Mike.
The 80 cents are back. So maybe
Bring
just
your Juno.
wait a little longer and the 12 strings might come back. But just being aware of that. So, there might be a day where Telecasters don't make sense, like they're old or something. I don't know. Like we just need to be aware of the gear thing and the sounds. Like the chorus effect was really lame for a long time.
It's
and
hot
then
as
like
can be now.
2011, it became cool again.
Shout out Glenn Yoder, 2 chorus pedals on his board.
So just being aware of some of these things and really letting your preferences die as you're serving the church through generations. So gear, and then co-leading, like letting other people lead. You've got to let other people step up and take the best songs, take the best spaces. I picture myself as I'm 45 now. I picture myself as a 60-year-old worship leader, just kind of hanging out a lot in the back, doing a lot of sound, but championing, pushing people forward, getting my maybe I'll get beard dye or something. I don't know. It's maybe not, right? Like I always joke like, yes, I wear skinny jeans because my body is filling in my regular
reverse skinny jeans.
I'm not trying to be cool, but my body's just filling them in.
That's too good. Too good. Well, I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So that's freaking killer. I just love that. But I like what they're saying is like hold some things loosely and start looking for the people around you that you can coach and cheer on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it also occurs to me, and not to be too prescriptive, but maybe just for the sake of riffing here for a moment. If we're going to age as worship leaders, I know one of the things you did is you went and got more education in worship.
Oh, yeah.
To like fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
Like it's like taking your vitamins or something. You've had a particular journey in worship.
Yeah.
I've had a particular journey in worship. They've been different paths in some way, Mike, but we've drawn some of the same conclusions. Or some of the things that feed us now were things that we're missing in our life. And I'm just thinking of like contemplative practices and just things that I didn't grow up with in a charismatic church. And the charismatic worship world doesn't understand or see or even have language for it.
Yeah.
I know that you went to the Weber Institute, right? Like maybe that's a good thing. Yeah.
So, my undergrad was in jazz guitar, just a basic Bachelor of the Arts. And I really didn't nobody was asking me to get deeper educated in the worship world. I had to seek it out myself. There is so much depth in worship. Like, for instance, I'm talking to a church now that they want to connect from kindergarten to their sunshine class, their sages, a worship journey and an arc for their church. Rather large church of like, what does that look like biblically, theologically? Like, could something be happening in the middle school that's also happening in the sunshine class, that's also happening with the kids? Is there any way to connect the arc of worship so we're not just doing salty orange songs in elementary school and then you get to middle school and you do Hillsong and then you move to, we're just, there's an arc, right? And the worship education gives me a lens for that and understanding that, there's a biblical narrative. As a worship leader, I can and should care about the Eucharist elements, like the
Yeah,
physical elements.
That's the center of the church for thousands of years, right?
Absolutely. I should have an opinion about that. Where they're placed, how they look, whether or not there's a cross in our facility, based upon the context of who we're reaching. Contextually, how we're to involve different nationalities and people of color and gender. Like there's biblical ideas behind all this. None of this is a surprise to God. So as we're getting older, yes, if you want to stay in the worship world and you don't necessarily feel called to plant a church and you want to continue to play and be, then I definitely suggest getting some more education and becoming a reader. If you're not a reader, become more of a reader.
No, I love that, because it really doubles down back on that thing we were saying a minute ago when we were talking about being a developer and turning things loose. Well, I mean, if I want to be a developer, if I'm more developed, then I actually have more to give away.
Yeah.
It's so basic. Like I can't give away what I don't have.
Yep.
And if I grew up without really a theology or an appreciation for the Eucharist, I can't give that away.
Yep.
I can't reproduce that. So, maybe this is a moment for the worship leaders who are listening to us, who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, to go, you know what? I can go back to school.
Yeah.
That might be the thing, especially now. Gosh, it's easier than ever. Everything's online.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some great schools. There's lots more. The Weber School actually started as a doctoral program. So there's even doctoral programs at Fuller, and so many new places are popping up just to go deeper in the Word. And we become, for years and years, it was like, hey, Mike, you're my worship guy. You're my worship guy. And kind of what's built into that is, hey, we need you to sing some songs with a band before we get up here and bring this powerful message. And you're my worship guy. You're my music guy, right? Well, that's great. I'd love to be your music guy. But hey, I've also got an opinion about discipleship and about how these songs are formational, how the stage and the setting for worship is formational, and the space and the way we present online, like how all these things tell the story of God. I can be an expert in that. You can be an expert in other forms of discipleship or preaching or different forms of the church, but we can be an expert in what we're in and even be paid well for it and be part of the conversation rather than just the music guy or girl bringing the warm up to the sermon,
Yeah, that priestly role, it's bigger.
It is.
It's just bigger than we think it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why people have not grown old in worship. It's because we've made the role so small.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, and even what you're sharing, is we could reimagine the role to be bigger.
Yeah.
Like we're imagining the space, we're imagining the Eucharist, we're imagining the songs, and the songs are a journey. We're going to tell the story of God.
Yeah.
We're imagining what that room says in its physicality.
Yeah.
And by the way, physicality is important because Jesus Christ was enfleshed.
Yeah.
All of this stuff matters.
Yeah.
And this is worship.
Yeah, I'd love to see worship leaders and pastors overseeing the 101 and 102 classes of their churches. What is the role of worship? This thing we do when we gather for 30 minutes and then we listen to somebody talk for 30 minutes and then we, what is this thing we do every week? How is it formational? What is being formed in you and through you in this space? Well, I'm your worship pastor. I'd love to share with you what is happening there. You have a responsibility when you walk in, right? So, growing old in this place, it is hard because there's not, for years, I always joke, like I walk by the pastor's desk on Christmas Eve and it's full of gifts and flowers and cards and so much, and then my worship leader gifts are always, significantly sweeter and less, hey, get Mike a $10 iTunes gift card, but get Adam the, Ruth, Chris, cause you're the pastor, especially in the South. I
haven't received that yet, Mike.
Oh, come on, dude.
No.
You got better gifts.
I do have one. Okay, listen, I will tell you this. Side note. There's a guy at my church, and every year, Christmas Eve service, he brings me the nicest bottle of whiskey. Like the nicest stuff. Puts it on my desk. Like I'd be disappointed if I didn't have it now. That's how conditioned I am.
Yeah, and he gives Glenn, your worship leader, some PBR, right?
Probably. Maybe Glenn likes that. I don't know.
And that's just kind of the way the world is wired. But I envision a future where the worship leader is carrying more of a priestly role. Yeah. Maybe not in every church, in every scenario, but certainly increasingly that we carry more of the weight of...
Well, I think the reason I wanted to have this piece of the conversation with you was I just wanted to say to Vineyard worship leaders, if you're called, we want you to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Like even if you're in your 60s and 70s, we want you to stay in your game, you know? And I realize that's not just a choice that the worship leader themselves gets to make, but it's also one that's made in community and somebody else has to say yes or no. Yep. I get that. I hope that as the Vineyard gets older, that we have older worship leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we just make space. We make space for people that have chosen not to plant churches but stay in the game.
That's right.
Right? Because they do have a place and a calling and a value.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thanks for coming on for part 2.
Yeah, man.
Bro, we talked a lot today.
It's an honor.
Oh, man. All right, everybody. Peace.
Hey everyone, Casey Corum here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.